Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. There is no denying whatever you want to say, whatever you want to argue. If you enjoy The Acolyte, that's fine. If you enjoy Disney Star Wars, that's fine. I don't care. I don't mind. Go out, enjoy it, have your fun. Who am I to pee all over your parade, right? But at the end of the day, you cannot deny numbers, right? 2 plus 2 still equals 4, and there is no doubt about it that The Acolyte has probably been one of the biggest wastes of like $180 million that the Walt Disney Company has done in modern era, and that's really saying something considering the disastrous dumpster fires that they've had. And you can talk about review bombing, and you can argue all of that kind of nonsense. We've had other articles that come out and flat out say that doesn't matter, and we know that doesn't exist because we can give you plenty of historical examples of why it doesn't happen. So there's one thing you cannot deny. The Acolyte is absolutely the worst rated Star Wars product of all time. The fans have absolutely rejected it in overwhelming numbers. The series doesn't even hardly chart in any way, shape, or form, except for when they release a 2-parter episode on the exact same day. It's not showing up on Nielsen. It's not showing up on Samba. This show has been an absolute failure, and there's no doubt of denying that whatsoever. Why did this show fail? Well, for one, it's about a bunch of characters that nobody cares about, that nobody's really interested in, set during a time period, the High Republic, which is something new that Disney Star Wars is completely and totally made up. It's also based on a series of comic books and books that have failed miserably with the core fans, with the major Star Wars audience out there. They've literally gotten to a point where they sell less than 10,000 copies worldwide. This includes selling them to libraries and bookstores and everything else. They just simply don't sell. It was a failed, miserable idea. And guess what, boys and girls? That's one of the things that Disney Star Wars is really good at, is doubling down on failed, miserable ideas. But I think probably the biggest issue, and this is something that we knew was going to come from The Acolyte, is there was not going to be any good guys. There was not going to be any bad guys. Everything was going to be shades of gray. We heard this from the actors. We heard this from the showrunner. And boys and girls, it turns out that that's exactly what we got here with The Acolyte and Leslye Headland herself. Yes, Harvey Weinstein's former assistant, ladies and gentlemen, is out there defending her absolute deconstruction of Disney Star Wars and the great honorable people that the Jedi absolutely were inside of George Lucas' show. Because, as you can see over from Bounty and Comics, the Acolyte showrunner Leslye Headland defends series' portrayal of the Jedi. Says it may feel like I'm criticizing the Jedi as they exist in George Lucas' of yore, but that's not the case. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we know better than that, don't we? Because all of us know what was going on with the expanded universe. Yes, the EU. Yo, it is not Legends. Yes, it is actually the true canon of Star Wars, and any real fan out there will tell you that 100%. Because, and if it was just a bunch of wash, it was just a bunch of garbage that nobody wanted to use, and that Disney Star Wars had so many of their own original ideas, and they could come up and they were going to go in a bright new direction. Explain to me why they continue to rip off the EU time and time again, and then probably the most piss poor way they possibly could. It is a miserable failure. They have no original ideas whatsoever, and all they want to do is deconstruct and destroy things. And ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what she's out here, is defending her absolute miserable abomination of a failure of a show. And we are going to break down why all of her comments are absolute nonsense and why she contradicts herself over and over again, and absolutely shame her into oblivion, boys and girls, because making shame great again is something we are seeking to do around this channel, and Leslye Headland herself is absolutely one of those people that deserves to be shamed. So we're going to check out this article from Spencer McCooley, get into all of the juicy details and see exactly what is going on. But if you do enjoy our content, if you want to help us make shame great again around here, boys and girls, make sure you smash that like button, share and subscribe share this out with all of your friends, subscribe and or follow if you have not already. And if you can financially support the channel, please check out the links in the description down below, because we are pretty much a fan-funded channel, and we could not keep the lights on around here without you. So please check out that below. If not, make sure you smash that like button and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about all of this nonsense. So according to the Acolyte showrunner, Leslye Headland, the series' less than shining portrayal of the Jedi Order is not aiming to criticize George Lucas' original take on the collective group of light side adherents, but rather to get audiences to look at the existence from a different point of view. Yes, a different perspective. And there's one of my really good friends out there in the chat, Spartacus, who's a very great supporter of this channel all around. And as you guys can tell from the name of my channel, I am just your common nerd. I am not an expert on any of this kind of stuff. I am just a jack of all trades, master of none, but sometimes better than a master of one. And honestly, that's way too much to add in for our YouTube channel, so we are just the common nerd. But as Spartacus likes to point out, lack of oversight is something we're going to get into, is what she's talking about in here, because let's continue on, and why this is a complete and total contradiction of everything Star Wars fans have known about the Jedi during this time period, going all the way back immemorial. Headland offered this defense of Star Wars morally gray narrative while speaking to Collider's Maggie Levat on the premiere's episode of the 6th episode. In light of the episode's heavy focus on Kumar's anti-Jedi philosophies, the Jedi teaches there's only one way to access the Force, and if you don't do it their way, it fades. But there is another way. Below the surface of consciousness are powerful emotions: anger, fear, loss, desire. Lovett pressed the showrunner on how much fun it was to get to pick apart these ideas that have been baked into the franchise for so long, and then flip the narrative a little bit and make people look at things from a different point of view. I hope it's making people look at things from a different point of view. I can understand that fans, especially people who don't know the High Republic, yeah, why don't anybody know the High Republic? Oh, that's right, it failed miserably in sales and no one's reading it. That's right. May feel like I'm criticizing the Jedi as they exist in George Lucas's oeuvre, meaning the prequels in episode 5 through 6, but that's not the case. We're so much further back from that. We're in that era that Obi-Wan is talking about in A New Hope. We're in that period where the proliferation of power is so huge and far-reaching. Actually, in the next episode, you're going to see how far-flung particular missions with the Jedi are and the lack of oversight. Ah, yes, once again, boys and girls, the lack of oversight. Well, let me give you a fun little factoid out of the expanded universe, the actual Star Wars canon. The Jedi couldn't even scratch their nose without permission of the Senate in the old EU because of the Rusan Reformation. Yes, boys and girls, all of the crazy antics that had happened in the past because of the wars and all the battles, the Senate had to approve absolutely everything the Jedi did. And that was way before the little 100 years or so before The New Hope, where Leslye Headland is playing in her own little sandbox that, of course, will not affect anything going forward. No. Well, then when are you going to show Leslye Headland that the damage that you've done to the Jedi and their way of life and the honorable people that they are and the code that they live by and the restrictions that they have to live under? When are you going to show all of that being implemented? When are you going to show that change inside of the Jedi Order to see the heroes that we all know and love them to be? Oh, that's right! You have no capability of doing that whatsoever. You can only destroy and tear things down. Well, Leslye Headland, we are not going to let you get away with that. We are going to shame you into oblivion with facts and actual canon lore, because the real Star Wars fans are not going to put up with this nonsense. Expanding on her take on the Jedi, Headland continued, comparing these Jedi to the Jedi in the prequels is a little difficult because it's 100-ish years before those films. It's a century. Oh, yes, in an established order that's been around for thousands of years, 100 years is going to make such a huge difference. What's the catalyst for that? What was the change? Why are they acting differently then than 100 years later when we see them in the actual canon, George Lucas's Star Wars? Oh, that's right. You're not going to have an answer for that because your only goal was to get us to look at the Jedi from a different point of view. So you see, Versum is like, we cannot let this happen. She gets more and more concerned about that at the end of the season, and rightfully so, because she, as a very powerful Jedi Master, can sort of see what's on the horizon, whereas we meet the Jedi in the prequels, they're completely enmeshed at this point. Oh, yes! Her strong female protagonist. Isn't that actually the character that's played by her wife? There's no nepotism there. She's the one that sees the problem. She's the one that's going to fix it. She's the one that's going to put the Jedi on their honorable path forward. A completely and totally made up character that was literally nothing more than given an excuse to have Leslye Headland go out there and live out her fantasies of her girlfriend and her wife in a green alien outfit. And honestly, I've seen the pictures from her without the makeup. She looks better in it. Rough. Returning to Lovett's original question, Headland then asserted, one of the interesting ways to unpack the Jedis is when at their height, as they are here, the things they're doing differently. A Jedi doesn't pull their weapon unless they're prepared to kill. That's just a High Republic concept. They don't have battle droids. They don't have other people with lightsabers. Wait, but they do have people with blasters, right? And last I checked, unless you're strictly basing it on Kylo Ren in the Disney prequel trilogies, guess what? Jedi ain't out there surfing lightsaber blast without, a lightsaber! How are you supposed to defend yourself against a blaster? Are they supposed to just dodge and weave forever? Maybe it's some of that Force foo that you ripped off of the Matrix? Well, you ripped off a canon, and then you made it look just like the Matrix in your abomination of a television show? Explain that one to me, Leslye Headland! Because a lightsaber doesn't just stop a lightsaber! It also cuts through doors. It also cuts through floors. And it also starts lightsaber blasts, which we've seen in your show. Yeah, but I digress. Once again, this is a prime example of people who don't understand the sandbox that they're working in. They either never were a fan to begin with, or were too lazy when hired for the job to actually go out there and do a little research. Have you even watched any of these movies? How many times in the prequels did we see the lightsabers used to defend against blasters? Not just blasters from droids, but blasters from other people. Boba Fett? Oh, well, not Boba. It would have been his dad, Jango. But, oh, I don't know. How about the times we saw Luke use his lightsaber to do that kind of stuff in the original trilogy? Like, have you even watched your own material? They don't, because they're not fans. They just use this as an excuse to advance their career. It's just another notch on their belt. And they don't care if they destroy what we loved about Star Wars or any of the canon or anything that's ever happened before. That's how stupid and idiotic this take is. It just hurts my brain, which is why Leslye Headland deserves to be shamed, because she's an idiot who knows nothing about Star Wars and was too fucking lazy to get off her lesbian carpet munching ass to do any research. She'd just rather make sure she got to live out her fantasy of dressing up her wife in green alien makeup. But I digress. Drawing her thoughts to a topic of clothes, Headland ultimately affirmed, "So in my opinion, and in my experience, and what I was interested in digging into, it seems like there's times where you can break down the Jedi as a concept, whereas I wouldn't want to touch what has been established of them a century later." Well, the only reason you wouldn't want to touch that is because you know any amount of actual Star Wars fans that you had left, if you tried to go back and change anything that happened in George Lucas's Star Wars, not even the shills, not even the pixie dusters themselves would be able to legitimately defend you. Now, they would try. Well, we're updating it for a modern audience. And trust me, if Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni and Leslye Headland thought they could get away with that, they would have already done it by now. But they can't, because there's still a remnant of some kind of common sense left, at least from a financial standpoint, of how insane that would be. But if they were able to continue this franchise on successfully, give them 10 years. They would have tried it. But this franchise isn't moving on successfully. Disney Star Wars is dead, and they have done it themselves. The Acolyte is just the latest example of that. You can go all the way back to Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can go all the way back to the Book of Boba Fett. I mean, you can go all the way back to, oh, I don't know, The Force Awakens, which was literally just a rehashing of The New Hope. And that's exactly what I said when I walked out of the movie theater. I was willing to still give it a shot. I watched the rest of them in the theaters. But there's no denying that Disney Star Wars has failed. Leslye Headland's High Republic doesn't sell. The show it's based in that same universe and in that same time period as literally the lowest rated television product, Star Wars product in history. They have failed. They have failed because they never cared. Their goal was to either literally advance their career or destroy what greater men before them had created. And guess what? I don't care. Let them burn. Let them continue to destroy it, because eventually the fans will get a hold of it again. Just like we've seen with Transformers in the Energon universe. Just like what we've seen with Blade and Mahershala Ali. Just like what we're about to see with Deadpool and Wolverine. When the fans get a hold of something, when the people that know things get a hold of it, it's successful. And it makes us happy. When monsters, and honestly a person that probably deserves to be in prison, like Leslye Headland, get a hold of things, it's going to fail miserably. So, Leslye Headland, be shamed! Because you never understood the Jedi, you never understood fans, and at the end of the day, the most important part is you never desired to. You were too lazy, you didn't care. The fans have rejected you, and at the end of the day, the paying customers have walked away, and that's the most important part. You failed, everything Disney touches turns to dust, and Disney Star Wars is dead.